Lane Kiffin's job at Ole Miss just keeps getting easier.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Locked On Ole Miss Podcast is the most watched Ole Miss podcast and brings you daily coverage of the Ole Miss Rebels. I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the National Member and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. On today's show, we break down how Ole Miss has built this program into what you see today. With 3 10-win seasons in the last 4 years, Lane Kiffin has found his formula, and everything seems to be getting a little bit easier. Ole Miss is on a path similar to Clemson's rise a decade ago. So what's next? Plus, with a loaded roster heading into spring, we look at key questions that need answering. And of course, we talk about the huge basketball matchup against Mississippi State. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special shout out to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. And don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy. They offer more perspectives on college football, the SEC, and yes, even Ole Miss. So check it out. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So Lane Kiffin's job at Ole Miss just keeps getting easier, and by no means am I saying the job is easy. I'm saying compared to what it was in 2019 when he took over, this program has been completely transformed into a level that people under the age of 70 probably don't remember seeing, and even then, that was a different type of football than what is going on now. Lane Kiffin has made it easier by the day at Ole Miss and has them on a track similar to what Clemson was on about 10 years ago as well. Ole Miss only lacks a couple of things and a couple of breaks away from that breakthrough to where they could be a dominant program. And you look and they have Trevor Etienne and Lawrence at quarterback and all of that. Trevor Lawrence, if that would happen, that is the next step for Ole Miss. That is the next thing that we need to pay attention to. And Lane Kiffin has done this, honestly, with a tireless effort to roster building. That has been the secret sauce for Lane Kiffin when he was at Ole Miss. I mean, it's not hard. You win games with talent. And Ole Miss consistently has the top 5 rosters in my lifetime. 2024 was the best to ever play football at Ole Miss. I don't care what anybody says. That was the best roster that has ever played at Ole Miss. 2025, it's went down a little bit, but that's only because of experience. You have talent coming into the room. So the roster building that Lane Kiffin has done has put Ole Miss in a position to where everything just gets a little bit easier. Whenever you have just a bunch of dudes on the field, there's 5 stars all over the place. And Ole Miss as a program, it looks different. They act different. They win games differently. Sure, they can get upset, but everybody gets upset. Everybody remember when Clemson went down to the Orange Bowl and played Dana Holgorsen in West Virginia, and West Virginia put 70 on them? Bad games happen. That doesn't mean that Dabo Swinney and Clemson wasn't going to make their national championship runs because they lost to West Virginia in the Orange Bowl. So realize the difference between a program and a game. And I have been hard on Lane Kiffin for some of his decisions and some of the things that's done. Stuff that honestly, as a fan, I'm entitled to do. And honestly, I think I'm pretty nice about it. But I did that. I understand that. But I also understand the difference between a game and a program. Listen, there is not many Ole Miss fans out there that is not happy with the Ole Miss football program right now. There is nearly a 100% approval rating for the program as it sits right now. But if you go micro and start looking at individual things, whenever you start nitpicking, because we've gotten to the point where small things can cost you a chance of doing big things, that is the difference in the program right now. These little slight annoyances, these things that need to get fixed, but the program as a whole, everybody's absolutely thrilled with. That's just the way we are and what we are as a program at the moment. So Lane Kiffin making it easier and everything happen easier. An example of that is the transfer portal. It feels like Ole Miss is a destination spot in the transfer portal, to where this year it didn't even necessarily seem like they tried overly hard compared to what they did a year ago to really succeed in the transfer portal. And yet they were able to pull in the number 2 class in the transfer portal this year, right behind LSU. And they were one player away from back-to-back national championships. If they would have gotten one more player to go to Ole Miss, they would have ended up number 1. That transfer portal, the Portal King, all of that stuff, that branding has made it to where you can attract transfers easily to Ole Miss at an easier rate than several other schools on the map, like Auburn and LSU and Texas Tech. And those schools, those are desperate schools at the moment, which means they're overpaying. They're just essentially trying to fill out their roster by buying. Ole Miss is not overpaying. The way it works is, you can say you've got $1 million to spend on as many quarterbacks as you want. It can be 1 quarterback, it can be 2 quarterbacks, it can be 3 quarterbacks, but you have $1 million. And Ole Miss has position values set up. Ole Miss is at that point. Everybody else is just figuring out how to use the transfer portal. Ole Miss is setting up a capologist with exactly what needs to happen. Then you look at the high school recruiting. And Ole Miss just had its best high school recruiting class in Lane Kiffin's tenure at Ole Miss, to the point where you're starting to wonder if in 2026 in that class, Ole Miss has a shot at a top 10 class. We talked to Brian Smith about that this weekend. You will see that. All whether or not Ole Miss can hit a top 10 class. And if Ole Miss can land one of these quarterback prospects like a Landon Duckworth or a Ryder Lyons or something like that, you could see it snowball potentially for Ole Miss to do that. So all of these 10-win seasons have put Ole Miss in the position to where they can roster build effectively. You know how it's going to get even easier, though? Ole Miss needs to win something. They need to get to Atlanta. They need to make the playoff. They need to win a playoff game. That is the next step for Ole Miss. Ole Miss has gone as far as they can without actually winning something. And that is the next step. Clemson did the whole thing as well. Everybody at Ole Miss likes to joke around and do the "We Are Ole Miss" thing. I can't stand that, but they do it. But that's no different than in the 2010s, early part, Clemsoning was a saying. And everybody was talking about Clemsoning. And that all was a thing until Clemson won that national title and started their run. Ole Miss needs to keep knocking on the door, because eventually they will kick it down. I have faith in Lane Kiffin to be able to figure this out. I have faith in Charlie Weiss Jr. to be able to figure this out. I have faith in Pete Golding to be able to figure this out. And I have faith in Austin Simmons to be able to figure this out for the Ole Miss Rebels this year. In 2022, Jackson Dart, his first year as a starting quarterback, but he had been at Ole Miss in like 6 months whenever he was starting at quarterback. It was problematic. Ole Miss won 8 games. They struggled at the end of the year. They lost to Alabama, and then they got beat by Arkansas, and they got beat by Mississippi State, and they got beat by Texas Tech. They ended up 8-5. This is the next new quarterback that he's had. His first quarterback was Matt Corral. He walked in there. Matt Corral went 5-5 in 10 games. It would have been more games than that, but Texas A&M chickened out and faked COVID to get out of playing a game that they were going to lose. In 2022 was the Jackson Dart start. 8-5. So if you're looking at what's happening in year ones of Lane Kiffin quarterbacks, you can see where 9-3, 8-4 would kind of be the ballpark of where you want to set your expectations. I probably would at 9-3 just based off of Ole Miss's schedule in 2025 versus in 2022. To where you had to deal with the SEC West and that, and Alabama in their heyday and all of that stuff. So Ole Miss has an easier schedule in 2025, 2025. Only true road games that Ole Miss has is at Kentucky, at Mississippi State, at Georgia, and at Oklahoma. Ole Miss will probably be favored in 3 of the 4 games on the road. And they'll potentially be favored in every single game at home. That is the new normal and the easiness that Lane Kiffin has built. Lane Kiffin has completely transformed exactly how others look at Ole Miss. It's interesting. It's really interesting to see through roster building and everything he's been doing, branding on social media, the whole 9 yards, picking moments to draw attention to Ole Miss. He's an expert at that, by the way. He is an expert. It's kind of like that monotone commercial at Florida Atlantic. He knew that that would get him on ESPN, and that is what he did. He is an expert at doing that. And because of all of this hard work, it's just getting a little bit easier for Lane Kiffin. Just getting a little bit easier for him. You know, Austin Simmons is the talk of Ole Miss football, but Lane Kiffin has more than just quarterback buzz to navigate. What are the potential landmines that could shake up the Rebels? Stay tuned for a full breakdown plus spring practice dates. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes it easy to eat well with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's calorie smart, protein plus, or keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. You know, I recently tried their Protein Plus meals, and they were packed with flavor and kept me full throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege, 50 off, and use code LockedOnCollege, 50 off. That's all one word, to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's Locked On College, 50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege, 50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's easy for me to say, right? All right. So there's some interesting questions that are going on. Lane Kiffin has done a miraculous job of building this Ole Miss roster and has done things that, honestly, Ole Miss fans have not seen at the University of Mississippi since Johnny Vaught. And at this rate, if Lane Kiffin stays there for a long period of time, he will have his name somewhere on that campus and have a statue up as well. That is the trajectory that he is on. But there are some questions that need to be answered this spring. And the spring practice dates have been released, not officially by the school, but one of the recruiting flyers got released out there. And it's 3 days a week: March 18th, March 20th, March 22nd, March 25th, March 27th, March 29th. 3 days a week for 5 weeks. Those are the 15 practices for Ole Miss football. Now, one thing is interesting. April 15th, 17th, and 19th, I will not be around because of my surgery and surgery recovery. So that'll be Brian Smith days on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we'll have evergreens on Tuesday and Thursday while I am recovering from surgery. But I'll be around for March 18th through April 12th. And if there is an open scrimmage, we'll have Dalen Flowers on campus going to that scrimmage and talking about what he sees. We'll have people from the Rebel Walk. We'll have Michael Katz. We'll have Sam Hutchins. We will blow out spring football just like we always do. But those are the dates that everybody needs to realize. March 18th through April 19th, which April 19th is probably going to be a Grove Bowl games, hot dog eating contest as well. So March 18th through April 17th is probably a better way to put that as well. So we'll see exactly what happens. So in spring practice, Ole Miss has to deal with some new beginnings. Listen, Jackson Dart was a hero of this program in 2023 and 2024. He is somebody that did absolutely everything. He tried to build a national championship level team, which he did a fantastic job of. There was a couple of, I guess, discrepancies that I can blame directly on analytics for Ole Miss not reaching their potential. But Jackson Dart did everything he was supposed to do. But the quarterback that was behind Jackson Dart was Austin Simmons. And through this offseason, he has done all of the right things. that you want to expect from somebody that is going to be the quarterback. He has quit playing Ole Miss baseball. He has taken a lead role in recruiting on social media, in marketing, and he is getting players in the high school ranks to pay attention to Ole Miss as well. Samari Reed, Winston Watkins, Ladarian Clardy, Keon Young, those guys come to mind. Ole Miss ended up, I think, with 6 or 7 Florida players that Ole Miss got in the high school signing class, and you can't tell me it is not a lot about Austin Simmons. Austin Simmons last year, 19 of 32, 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Not the biggest numbers ever, but good numbers for Austin Simmons and better than like Eli Manning, Matt Corral, quarterbacks that have been pretty good at Ole Miss and very good Rushmore level quarterbacks did not have a good freshman season as Austin Simmons in a backup role. So we'll be able to see what happens to him when he takes over completely. There's 3 things that Ole Miss fans are going to be watching for in spring practice whenever it happens in a month. Austin Simmons taking the reins of Ole Miss football with a ton of hype. Austin Simmons is the story of Ole Miss football right now, for better or worse, the offseason, the whole 9 yards. Everybody is going to be paying attention to what number 13 does. The Southpaw is going to be out there, and I expect nothing but great things out of Austin. The other question is going to be, can Ole Miss create a run game with new look running backs and a new look offensive line? With Logan Diggs and Shakai Mills-Knight and Kewan Lacey running behind an offensive line that could be Devin Harper, it could be Patrick Kutas, it could be Bryson Sanders. The interior of that offensive line is going to change. The tackles, I think, is going to be Jaden Williams and Diego Pounds, but the interior of that offensive line is going to look a whole lot different. Can Ole Miss generate a run game in this offense? Because in the Game Changers episode that I did yesterday, we talked about Logan Diggs and how big it was for Logan Diggs to at least get off to a quick start because of Austin Simmons, because of what's going on. You've got new outside wide receivers. You have a lot of questions to where if players don't hit, it could be problematic. Now, there are redundancies built into the system in recruiting these players, but it is still something to pay attention to. And the last thing is something that nobody's really talking about right now. The safety position on defense could be very interesting and very young. Now, we've seen Sage Ryan, we've seen Antonio Kite, all these players that got brought in, but the young players that Ole Miss recruited, they're very high on Keon Young. They're very high on Cortez Thomas. They're very high on Ladarian Clardy. Those 3 guys, it's going to be interesting. And with Ole Miss playing at basically a 3 safety look, you could have a point by the end of the year where all 3 of them could be out there playing safety, depending on how they progress. Those safeties could be very young. Now, with young safeties means that you're going to have busts from time to time. They're not going to be as rock solid as people would demand that they be. They're going to have growing pains. Now, Lane Kiffin as a coach is not a coach that will stand for growing pains necessarily. He only puts people out there that knows exactly what they're doing and is going to do their job every single time. If you don't do your job, he does not play you. So that cautions me a little bit against talking about this, but I do think at least one of those safeties is going to get a lot of playing time this season, and all of them could. I was at the Under Armour All-American game, and Keon Young and Cortez Thomas were there. They were playing on different teams, so I had to kind of walk in between fields. But Keon Young, you could see the athleticism. He is a smart guy. He is somebody that I could see playing free safety and is the heir apparent to Trey Washington and AJ Finley. He's that type of player. I want to see him in the Ole Miss system. I want to see him playing for Pete Golding and doing that. But you have Cortez Thomas, who was on the other field, and I went over there, and he was helping people get lined up to know their assignments. He already had a grasp of what he needed on the defensive side of the ball. So that tells me he's going to come in with his head up as well. And then you have Ladarian Clardy, who I did not get to see personally, but he's a player out of Escambia, Florida, and he is just on his film, he's the best player on the field. No matter who they're playing, he's the best player on the field. So those three athletes, I'm interested to see what they do at the safety position for Ole Miss. I mean, it's kind of an interesting thought. It is kind of an interesting thought exercise of what exactly could happen. But Ole Miss could have a freshman playing a significant role on the back end of that defense. That's something that I'm going to watch, and I'm going to pay attention in spring to see which safety separates themselves. Is it somebody like Sage Ryan, Antonio Kite, those guys that were recruited out of the transfer portal, or will one of these young guys make a move? That is something I'm paying attention to as well. You know, Ole Miss and Mississippi State face off in a sold-out showdown at the Pavilion. The Rebels are chasing win number 20. Can they take down the Bulldogs? Don't miss our final segment for a full preview. You know, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use. So when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com today to join. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So Ole Miss slipped by South Carolina. That was a rough game, but Ole Miss was able to play pretty well in crunch time. Malik Dia completely took that game over. He ended up against South Carolina with 18 points and 3 rebounds, and he was a handful for everybody to deal with on the South Carolina front line. And Ole Miss needed him because at one point he scored 12 consecutive points for the Rebels. Really big-time player. And this game was weird because every Ole Miss big man was in foul trouble, had 4 fouls with like 15 minutes to go in the second half. So nobody could literally get a foul. And because of that, South Carolina was able to chip away to the point where they eventually took a lead, but Ole Miss was able to take back control and win the game for their number 19 on the season and their 8th overall. There's a big game against Mississippi State on Saturday. I am curious. The Pavilion is sold out on that game. Ole Miss lost against Starkville in overtime. It's a game that, honestly, if Matthew Murrell was not hurt, Ole Miss wins that game. A blocked layup kind of did him a little bit dirty. But Ole Miss lost that game. It started a 3-game skid for the Ole Miss Rebels. And that's kind of that. Since that 3-game skid, Ole Miss, I think, has won 3 of 4 or something like that, 4 or 5. So we'll see if Ole Miss can win the game against Mississippi State, win on the road against Vanderbilt, which is going to be an increasingly tough ball game. Ole Miss could have 10 wins in the SEC. I think the all-time record is 13 for Ole Miss. So we'll see exactly what that looks like as well. The keys to this game is simple. Keep Josh Hubbard from going off and defend the 3-point line aggressively. You need to make Mississippi State beat you with 2-point shots. Don't let them get hot. If they get hot, they could be a problem. But if they're forced to play a slowdown game, an old-style Chris Jans game, not the team that is this year, just an old-style dentist-type game, I think you'll be in good shape there. And also be competitive on the boards versus Mississippi State. Ole Miss got mauled on the boards at Starkville. If Ole Miss can stay within 10 on the rebounds, they are going to have a really good chance to win and stay out of foul trouble because Mississippi State kind of needs another ref show type game to win this game. They need it to be herky-jerky. They don't need it to be free-flowing. Momentum and everything is on Ole Miss's side, but the refs can take the crowd out of the game by calling stupid fouls. And if they do what they did against South Carolina, it will be problematic. The players you need to watch in this game is the same players just about every game. Dre Davis, who seems to be the big shot maker on this team, he made a unbelievable basket to put up by Ole Miss up by 3 points against South Carolina after his tip-in against LSU. Sean Pedulla did not play well against the South Carolina Gamecocks. He needs to rebound against Mississippi State. And Matthew Murrell, he's just steady. It's the same thing. There's a lot of times when you look out there, Matthew Murrell, even hurt, is being tasked with guarding the best player on the other team. That is what's going on and how it's done. The prediction of this game, I don't know what it is. My gut tells me Ole Miss is going to win this game by double figures. I think Ole Miss wins 77-65 in the Pavilion for their 9th win of the season, which would guarantee a 500 record in the toughest conference in the history of conferences if you talk to anybody. But 77-65 will do the trick. Chris Beard and the guys are completely ready to go. This is a veteran Ole Miss team, and I am very impressed with what they do in winning time. We talked about the Texas A&M and how they kind of melted down a little bit in that game. It was a situation to where Ole Miss played un-Ole Miss-like in that game. The Texas game, there was a little bit of you could see them like fighting to not let that happen again, and they were able to pull that off. And then after that, Ole Miss just at winning time has been killing people again to the point where you can count what's going on and everything. Ole Miss shot like 85% from free throw line against South Carolina. Jamin Brakefield was a big star there as well. Really interesting stuff. All right, so I've told you about my the Locked On channel's partnership with Amazon for March Madness. They're going to be doing a March Madness show for both the men's tournament and the women's tournament all March long. Tune in for that. It should be fantastic. I've told you about the app that is coming. There is a new app to where you can watch the Locked On Ole Miss podcast on a Roku device, to where it has different things to where you can set up your preferences and make your own timeline, essentially, to obviously it puts new episodes in there first where you can see exactly what's going on. That is going to be awesome. I am also being distributed now to about 60 different media markets in the country, to the point where I'm just in really good shape as far as visibility goes. There's a reason this podcast is as successful as it is, and it's you. Now we're going to be bringing more people in because of that. And of course, everybody can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram. Wherever you follow me, do that. But you can catch me on Tegna TV stations all across the country as well. I'm on ABC 24 in Memphis. You can see that. The timeline's there. As soon as I put a video up, it immediately goes up. And sometimes, just sometimes, you can see a video there earlier there than you can here. So we'll see exactly how that goes. I'm pretty fired up about what can happen. Honestly, if we're just going to be real about what's going on, if I make it through my surgery okay, and everything's fine, this fall is going to be a magnificent journey for Loomers. We are in a position to put the forgotten fan front and center. Not the 10,000 fans that Ole Miss has catered to for the better part of their existence. I'm talking about the other 190,000 fans that are out there that aren't paying for content, that don't live in Oxford. Those guys are Loomers. Those guys are everydayers, and we do the show for them with a little help from our friends. So thank you to everybody that contributes on the show and everything. But just know that this show is expanding rapidly to the point where you're going to be able to see this show on like 60 different avenues, both video and audio, in the coming years. I've even heard rumors of a potential Locked On radio channel to where my show will be on the radio each and every single day or something like that. So we'll see exactly how it goes. But 2025 is growing. 2026 will probably continue that growth. And I figure in 5 years, the Locked On brand will be the preeminent way that college football and college sports and sports in general is followed. Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast out there. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC Podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just old English meaning bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.